I'll never forget that night. I had been a nurse for nearly 5 years at St. Augustine's Hospital, one of the oldest medical centers in the city. The hospital had a reputation for being haunted, but like most people, I never really believed in such things. It was just stories that the night shift workers would laugh about to pass the time. But something happened that night, something that changed everything. Started with a phone call. I had just clocked in for my 10 p.m. shift, still groggy from the long day. The call came in about 20 minutes after I had changed into my scrubs and grabbed a coffee. The nurse on the other end of the line, Susan, a colleague of mine, sounded panicked. "There's something wrong with room 313, she said, her voice trembling. I frowned. Room 313 had been empty for weeks. The last patient who'd been there passed away from complications after a routine surgery. We never really liked going into that room. It was small, tucked away in a quiet corner of the hospital, and the lights flickered strangely. But it was just a room, right? Okay. Susan, what's going on? I asked, trying to sound calm. I don't know, she replied. I swear, I saw someone standing in there, but when I checked, there was no one. The lights are flickering like crazy, and the bed is moving. I tried to brush it off as a malfunction. Hospitals were full of strange things, equipment failures, odd noises. I'd seen my fair share of creepy moments, but nothing that couldn't be explained away by stress, lack of sleep, or a faulty system. All right, I said. I'll head up to 313 and check it out. But as I made my way through the darkened hallways, something inside me felt off. The air was heavier than usual, like a storm was brewing. Though it was a clear night, I tried to shake the feeling. I had a job to do. As I approached room 313, I noticed the lights flickering more intensely. My heart skipped a beat. The lights in the hallway were fine, so why were the ones in this room malfunctioning? I pushed the door open, and the sudden cold air hit me like a brick. The room was pitch black except for a small sliver of light coming through the curtains. The bed was indeed moving, just slightly, rocking back and forth. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the silence. As I moved closer to the bed, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was no patient in the bed, but the sheets, no, someone was under them. I felt a sharp, sudden rush of dread. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I wasn't alone. And then I heard it, a whisper, a voice so faint it was almost a breeze. Help me? It wasn't coming from the bed. It was coming from behind me. I froze. The door was still wide open. I turned slowly, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was no one. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My breath caught in my throat. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Help me. I can't breathe. I turned back to the bed. The sheets were still moving, like someone was beneath them, shifting in discomfort. Then the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart racing, and there, standing in the doorway, was a figure. Tall, shrouded in shadows. A woman. I knew this woman. She was a former patient. Her name was Alice Harper, and she died in this very room 2 years ago after a botched procedure. She had a face that was both haunting and familiar. Her eyes sunken, skin pale, her mouth twisted in agony. Please, help me. Her voice was barely a whisper, like the wind, but it was enough to send a chill crawling down my spine. I backed up slowly, nearly tripping over my own feet. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. My breath came in shallow gasps as I turned toward the door, desperate to escape. But before I could reach it, the lights in the room flickered one last time, and then went completely dark. The darkness felt suffocating, the kind of darkness that wraps itself around your chest, squeezing the air out of you. I could feel the cold against my skin, a sharp contrast to the heat building up in my throat. Panic was setting in fast, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Then, just as I thought I might collapse from sheer terror, the voice spoke again. Don't leave me. I need you. It was louder this time, desperate. I could barely think, my legs frozen in place. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my body refused to move. Every instinct told me to get out, but I couldn't. Not with her standing in front of me. I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness. But it was as if the room had swallowed every shred of light. I could just barely make out her silhouette, the faintest outline of her face. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, almost unnatural. They glowed in the dark, a deep, unsettling shade of black. Suddenly, I felt a chill grip my spine, a presence, like someone was right behind me, breathing down my neck. The hairs on my arms stood up straight, and I didn't dare to turn around. Alice Harper wasn't just a ghost. I knew it in my bones. Something was wrong with her. "Why are you here?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Her lips twisted into something that could have been a smile. "You were supposed to save me," she said. "But you let me die." My stomach churned. Alice Harper had passed away 2 years ago, after complications from a routine surgery. It was one of those cases that left everyone questioning what went wrong. Her death was never fully explained. The staff at St. Augustine's had tried to move on, but I had never really forgotten. Her voice broke through my thoughts. "You killed me?" I recoiled, stepping back. "I didn't." The bed behind me creaked loudly, as though something heavy had shifted. My eyes snapped back to it. For a second, I thought I saw something moving beneath the sheets, but before I could react, I felt a cold, clammy hand grip my arm. The touch was ice. I spun around, gasping, and found myself face to face with her. Her skin was sickly pale, her fingers sharp as they dug into my flesh, holding me in place. Her eyes were wide with something I couldn't quite explain. It was as if she was pleading with me, but there was no humanity left in her. "Help me?" she whispered again, this time in my ear, so close I could feel her breath against my neck. The walls around us groaned. The entire room seemed to be alive, shifting and warping as if it were breathing. I shook my head, trying to pull away, but her grip tightened. "Please, let me go." Her face began to change. The flesh of her cheeks pulled back, her mouth widening in an unnatural grin, revealing rows of yellowed, jagged teeth. And then she hissed. It was like the sound of 1,000 whispers, all layered on top of each other. I stumbled back, my hands hitting the cold metal of the bed's frame. The door, still shut tight, wouldn't budge. I pressed myself against it, desperate to escape, but it was as if the room was closing in on me. The air was thick with the scent of something rotten. I could feel my skin crawling. My breath came in short bursts, as if I were drowning in a sea of cold water. And then, she smiled again. Her smile wasn't human. It was the smile of something other, something twisted. I could see the edges of her skin starting to peel away, like her face was melting, revealing something grotesque beneath. Her eyes weren't eyes anymore, just black voids. Her mouth, stretched impossibly wide, seemed to grow larger with each passing second. And then I heard something worse than the whispers, worse than the hiss. A low growl, a sound that seemed to come from deep within her chest, as if it wasn't her voice at all. Something was inside of her, something ancient. I turned to run, the door finally giving way as I threw myself against it, slamming it open. But when I stepped out into the hallway, it wasn't the hospital I knew. The walls were decayed, covered in dark streaks, the lights flickering in and out. The air smelled stale and damp. And then I saw it, movement in the distance, a shadow that was too large, too quick. I couldn't move. It was following me. The hallway stretched on endlessly, the flickering lights casting strange, jagged shadows that danced around me. Every step I took felt heavier than the last, like the very air was pressing down on me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't the St. Augustine's I knew. This place, this version of the hospital, was wrong. I turned to look behind me, my breath ragged, and I saw it. Figure, just a blur at first, but it was gaining on me. Fast. Too fast. It moved with unnatural speed, its limbs jerking in ways that shouldn't have been possible. It was humanoid, but its shape was off, too distorted, like a person trying to crawl out of its own skin. And then I saw its face, or what was left of it. It was Alice Harper, but not. Her face was melting, her features twisted into something monstrous, the skin sagging and dripping like candle wax. Her eyes, those black, empty voids, burned with an intensity one could feel from across the room. Couldn't scream. My body was frozen, as if the terror had drained all the sound from my throat. The growl grew louder, the horrible sound vibrating in my bones. Run. You have to run. But my legs refused to move. It was like being trapped in a nightmare where every attempt to escape only made things worse. Then a voice, her voice, cut through the air like a blade. You left me to die. I snapped out of my daze. The words rang in my head, echoing over and over. I had to get away now. My feet finally found the will to move, and I bolted down the hallway, desperate to escape the creature behind me. But the walls felt endless, stretching farther and farther, as though the building itself was alive, warping and shifting around me. The exit sign, the one I had passed just moments before, was now farther away, unreachable. I could hear it, her growing closer, the sounds of her steps echoing with an eerie, wet slapping sound. It wasn't like a person running. It was something else, something too wrong to comprehend. I turned a corner, my mind racing for an escape, and that's when I saw it. A stairwell. It led down deeper into the bowels of the hospital. A chance. I took it without thinking, hurling myself down the stairs as quickly as I could. My shoes slammed against the concrete steps, the sound of my panic deafening in the silence that surrounded me. I reached the bottom and found myself in a long, narrow hallway, one I didn't recognize. The walls were smeared with something dark and thick, the faint smell of decay clinging to the air. And then I heard it again, that growl, louder this time, closer. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the flickering lights and shadows that seemed to move with a mind of their own. I had to keep going. There had to be a way out. Suddenly, I saw a door at the end of the hallway, faintly glowing in the darkness. It looked like it led to a storage room, but I didn't care. It was something. It was a place to hide. I rushed toward it, pushing the door open, and stumbled inside. The room was small, filled with medical supplies and equipment, but at least it was a refuge. Temporary maybe, but better than nothing. I slammed the door behind me, my heart pounding in my chest, and leaned against it, trying to steady my breathing. But then I heard it, a soft scratching sound, almost like nails dragging against the floor. I turned, heart in my throat, and froze. There, standing in the corner of the room, was a figure. It wasn't Alice anymore. This thing was tall, its body thin and elongated, its limbs bending at unnatural angles. Its head was tilted at a sharp angle, staring at me with those same black, empty eyes. And then it opened its mouth. The growl that came out of it wasn't a sound. It was screaming, a sound that tore through my chest, clawing at my insides. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body was frozen, paralyzed by the pure, unrelenting terror that this creature radiated. The thing moved toward me with impossible speed, its hands outstretched. I closed my eyes, bracing for what I knew was coming. But then, in the blink of an eye, everything stopped. The scratching stopped. The growling stopped. The air went still. I opened my eyes, slowly, and saw nothing. The room was empty, but I didn't dare to move. The silence was thick, suffocating, but it was also wrong. I didn't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, my mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Was it real? Was I hallucinating? A cold shiver ran down my spine, and I glanced around the room, my eyes darting from corner to corner. And then I saw it. On the floor, beneath a pile of discarded medical charts, there was a small, blood-stained piece of paper. I reached for it, my hand shaking as I pulled it out. It was a patient report. Patient name, Alice Harper. And beneath her name, in a bold, red marker, deceased. Cause of death, undetermined. But then, in the corner of the page, in the same blood-red ink, patient 313 never left. I could hardly breathe. The words on the paper seemed to blur before my eyes, the red ink swirling like it was alive. My hands trembled as I held it, the crumpled report now a haunting weight in my grip. Patient 313 never left. I could feel my chest tightening, the walls of the storage room closing in. The air was thick with something heavy, guilt, fear, regret. Like I had somehow stumbled into the past, like I was not supposed to see this. I wanted to tear the paper up, destroy the evidence, but the more I looked at it, the more I realized that this wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a warning. I shoved it into my pocket, a surge of adrenaline pushing me forward. I had to get out. I had to find a way to survive. But as I turned to leave the room, something caught my eye. There, in the corner, was a small door I hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a stack of old equipment. It was a door I'd never seen in the hospital before, not in any of the maps, not in any of the old records. My instincts screamed at me to run, to turn back, but something in me pushed forward. Something told me that door held the answers I needed. I opened it. It led to a narrow, unlit corridor, the kind of place you'd never find on any hospital floor plan. The walls were cold to the touch, and the air felt thick, almost alive. I could hear faint murmurs, like distant conversations, but when I strained to listen, there was no one there. It felt like stepping into a forgotten part of the world, like I had crossed a threshold that shouldn't exist. I walked forward, my footsteps echoing in the silence, until I came to another door. This one was old, rusty, with a large, tarnished number on it, 313. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't just in a forgotten part of the hospital. I was in the place where Alice had died, the room that had never truly been emptied. I pushed the door open. It creaked, like a groan from the depths of the building itself. The room inside was dimly lit by a single flickering light, and I could feel the cold seep into my bones as I stepped inside. The room hadn't changed much since Alice's death. The bed was still there, untouched. The sheets rumpled as if someone had just gotten up, and yet, everything felt wrong. The walls were covered in marks, scratches, claw marks, like something had tried to escape. The floor was stained with something dark, something thick that smelled like rot. I wanted to turn around and leave, but I couldn't. My body refused to move, and then the whispering started again. "Help me." It was faint at first, but it grew louder with each passing second. I looked around frantically, trying to find the source, but there was no one. The room was empty, just me. The whisper came again, but this time it was clearer. "You have to help me." I froze. I knew that voice. It was Alice's. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands shaking as I stepped closer to the bed. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see the ghost of Alice Harper. But something deep inside me made me turn toward the bed. And there she was, Alice. But she wasn't the same. Her face was twisted, her features distorted in ways I couldn't explain. Her body was emaciated, skin pale and stretched tight over her bones. Her eyes were still those hollow, black voids, empty and unblinking. But there was something more in them now. Anger. Her hand reached out, trembling, fingers curling toward me like she was begging me to help. "Please, I can't breathe." Her voice was thin, strangled, like she was choking on her own words. I took a step back, my breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, but something stopped me. It was as if the air had thickened, holding me in place. "You left me to die." The words burned through my mind like a brand. And in that moment I knew. The truth hit me like a wave. Alice Harper hadn't just died. She had been taken. Her death hadn't been an accident. It hadn't been complications from surgery. No, it was something else, something darker, something unnatural. And it wasn't just her. I looked around the room, my gaze drawn to the walls. More marks, more signs of something that had been here long after Alice had died. The ghost of her wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning that the hospital had been hiding something ancient, something that had always been here. I felt it then, a presence, something else in the room, something older than Alice, older than this hospital. It was in the air. It was in the walls. It was inside the building itself. And now it wanted me. Suddenly, The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash. I spun around, but it was locked. The light above me flickered wildly, and I could hear something crawling toward me from the shadows. And then, just as I thought it would be over, the whisper came again. "You can't escape." The darkness closed in on me like a suffocating hand, and I could hear my breath, shallow and rapid, echoing in the void. The whispers came again, louder this time, as though the very walls were speaking, pulling me deeper into their grip. I tried the door, locked tight. There was no way out. The room felt like it was shifting, as if the walls were bending toward me, pushing me closer to the center of the terror that had taken hold of this place. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs, and for the first time since I entered this cursed hospital, I felt truly trapped. I tried to force the door open again, but it didn't budge. Desperation surged within me, urging me to find another way out, but every inch of the room screamed danger. The air was thick with something foul. It wasn't just the decaying walls or the smell of rot. It was something else, something ancient that had been hiding in the shadows for far too long. And then I heard it, the sound of skittering claws scraping across the floor, coming closer. My blood ran cold. I didn't dare turn to see what it was. I already knew. The growl, the deep, guttural sound that had haunted my every step. It was closer than ever. "Please, help me?" Alice's voice whispered from the corner, her tone now twisted, as if something was forcing her to speak those words, feeding off her agony. Couldn't look at her. Couldn't. I stumbled backward, my hands pressed against the cold walls, trying to keep my balance. The shadows in the corner of the room shifted. "It's not her." The thought flashed in my mind like a warning. It wasn't Alice anymore. Couldn't be. It was something that had taken her form. Something that had used her pain, her suffering, to lure me in. I turned, my mind racing. I had to find another exit. There had to be a way. Then, I noticed it, the cracks in the floor. Wide, jagged cracks that cut through the room like veins, glowing faintly with an unnatural, sickly light. I moved toward them, drawn by a force I couldn't explain. The whispers grew louder, frantic, clawing at my mind. The room seemed to distort around me, the floor shaking beneath my feet as the cracks in the earth widened. And then I saw it, a figure moving in the shadows, low to the ground. It was crawling, too fast, too fluid to be anything human. It was tall, its limbs stretched out unnaturally, with fingers that curled like the claws of a beast. But what caught my attention, what made my stomach drop, were its eyes. Black, deep, hollow. They glinted with a hunger I couldn't describe. It was alive. I backed away slowly, but the creature was too fast. It shot forward in an instant, leaping toward me with terrifying speed. The room was a blur of motion. I had no choice. I ran. I dashed across the room, slamming into the walls as I tried to reach the only window, but it was too high, too far out of reach. I was cornered. The thing was getting closer, its breath heavy and ragged, like it was savoring the fear rolling off of me. The walls groaned as though the building itself were alive, squeezing tighter, the cracks in the floor spreading like webs. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't. And then, as if the hospital itself was laughing at me, the lights flickered one final time. The shadows grew long, and in the heart of them, I saw her again. Alice. But she wasn't alone. The other figure, the one that had been crawling, had its claws wrapped around her. She was no longer the victim, no longer just the poor, suffering soul. Now she was the vessel. The creature, the thing, had taken her over completely. Her body, still twitching and convulsing with unnatural life, was now a puppet to something much darker. "You left me," Alice whispered again. It wasn't Alice anymore. It was whatever had been Alice. And now it had come for me. I turned to run again, but the creature was faster. Too fast. It was already on me, grabbing hold of my arm with the same cold, clammy grip I had felt when I first entered this nightmare. The fingers dug into my flesh, pulling me back, and I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck. And then I felt it, a sensation, like something was crawling under my skin, burrowing deep inside me, reaching into my very bones. It was the same feeling I had experienced when I first entered the hospital, when the whispering had started. It was here. It had always been here. Suddenly, everything stopped. The creature, Alice, everything went still. The air grew heavy, thick with an ancient, oppressive silence. I dared not move. And then, in the depths of the darkness, I heard it. A low, rumbling sound that shook the very walls. Help me, not Alice, not the creature, something else. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive. But it was aware of me, and it was waiting. The silence pressed down on me, suffocating, as if the entire hospital was holding its breath. The creature that had once been Alice, or what had become of her, stood frozen before me. Her hollow eyes stared into mine, no longer the expression of a woman, but the gaze of something ancient, predatory. I could feel the weight of it all, the suffocating presence that surrounded me. The very walls of the hospital seemed to be watching, listening, waiting for something. But what? I didn't have much time. I knew that now. I couldn't stay here. Couldn't let it get me. With a sudden surge of panic, I yanked my arm free from Alice's grasp. Her fingers, now brittle and cold, left deep imprints in my skin, but I didn't care. I had to get out. I turned and ran. My feet slapped against the floor, desperate. The echoes of my footsteps the only sound that accompanied me as I dashed through the dark hallways. The hospital stretched on longer and longer, as if it was trying to trap me, as if it was changing, twisting, growing with every passing second. I reached the stairwell. I had to get out. The growl, that guttural sound. I heard it again, closer now. The thing was chasing me. It had to be. I could feel it, its presence crawling through the air, closing in on me. It wasn't Alice anymore, not a human. It had become something more, something beyond comprehension. And it was hungry. I glanced behind me and saw it. The shadows shifting, elongating, stretching until it filled the entire hallway. It was impossibly large now, its limbs moving in jagged, violent motions. I ran faster. I burst through a door at the end of the hall, a door that opened into a small utility closet. It was cramped, the walls lined with cleaning supplies and old medical equipment. I crouched down, trying to steady my breath. My heart was pounding in my chest like a drum. The growling had stopped, but I knew better than to relax. It was still out there, somewhere in the dark. I could feel it watching me. The whispers came again. Help me, but they weren't coming from Alice. They were coming from all around me, from the walls, from the floor, from within the very building itself. My hands trembled as I pressed them to my ears, trying to block out the sound. But I couldn't escape it. It was everywhere. And then, in the midst of the whispers, I heard something else. A voice. Not the creature's voice. Not Alice's. A low, guttural voice that seemed to come from the very foundation of the hospital. You should never have come here. The words sent a chill through my spine, like an icy hand running down my back. The door behind me slammed shut with a deafening crash. I spun around in panic, my eyes wide with fear, and I saw it. The thing that had been Alice, no, the thing was standing in the doorway. It wasn't her anymore. It was the hospital. It was the darkness that had been feeding off the souls of those who had died here. It was the malice, the hatred, the unholy presence that had been here since the hospital was first built. And it wasn't just hunting me. It was waiting for me. You should never have come here, the voice repeated, louder this time. I stepped back, my mind spinning. It was over. There was no escaping this. I turned, my eyes darting around the closet for anything I could use, but there was nothing. No weapon, no way out, just the cold, unfeeling walls. And then I felt it. A hand, ice cold, touched my shoulder. I froze. The thing was behind me now. I didn't dare turn around. I didn't want to know what it would look like. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Help me, I can't breathe. And then, a voice that wasn't a whisper. You can't escape. You're part of it now. I turned around, unable to stop myself, and there it was. The thing wearing Alice's skin like a grotesque mask. Its eyes were black holes. Its mouth stretched into a smile that twisted into something unrecognizable. Its form was shifting, undulating, as though it wasn't fully human anymore. It was a shape made of nightmares. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I simply closed my eyes. And then, there was nothing. When I woke, I was back in the hospital. I don't know how much time had passed. The room was silent, but it wasn't the same hospital. It wasn't the place I remembered. Everything was off. The air was still thick, heavy, and the walls felt closer. The floor beneath me felt wrong. I got up, slowly, my legs trembling. I didn't know what was real anymore, but I knew this much. I had to leave. I had to find a way out. I walked through the hallways, not sure if I was walking in circles or if the building itself was changing. The hallways were endless, stretching on forever, no exit in sight. And then I heard it, the whisper, "You can't escape." I froze. It was the same voice, the same growl, the same chill crawling up my spine. I looked around, and there, in the distance, I saw her, Alice. But this time, she wasn't alone. The shadows had taken form. The darkness had come to life. And now it was coming for me.